Reading and listening is the best way to become fluent fast. And that's what you'll do in this lesson. We'll read a health article on the topic of exhaustion caused by technology. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer Nella. Let's get started. Our headline, exhausted. The reason may be how you're using technology. So notice here, they just have one word and a question mark. Of course, the full question would be, say it out loud. Are you exhausted? Are you exhausted? And exhausted means extremely tired. So you can simply ask someone, tired? Are you tired? If you ask them, are you exhausted? It means, of course, very, very, very tired. And usually we use them differently. I might use exhausted after being tired for many days or many months at the end of a vacation or a very busy project, but I would use tired every day just to describe a lack of energy. And then the headline goes on, the reason you're exhausted, but they didn't include that because it's obvious. The reason may be, so our modal may, so this is a possibility, modal plus base verb, and then how you're using technology. So the reason isn't because you're using technology, it's the method, the style, that's the how you're using technology. And it's in the present continuous because it's taking place now. You're using that technology now. Don't worry about taking notes. I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Now let's read the article together. You may think, so again, our modal of possibility, you may, but also you may not. So just possibility. You may think you're exhausted. So again, now we have the full structure. You are, as a question, are you exhausted? And then as a statement, you are exhausted. So repeat after me the contraction, you're. Notice how unstressed that is. You're exhausted, exhausted, exhausted. Because, like me, you have too many things on your plate. You may be familiar with this idiom. To have something, in this case, the something is many things on your plate. So the idiom is generally, I have a lot on my plate. I have a lot on my plate. I have so many things on my plate. I have so many projects on my plate. So you can use something specific like I have so many projects, or you can just be general. I have a lot of things, a lot of tasks. I have a lot on my plate. So it just means that you must do these things. So they're outstanding tasks. They're projects that need to be completed. They're things you need to do. You can use it in a workplace situation, like in this article, or like the example I gave, or you can use it in just a general sense. It could be housework you need to do. It could be things with your friends, your kids, your family, anything. Now, with this idiom, the main verb that you conjugate is have, and then you need to know the preposition is always on my plate, but you would change this to on his plate, on her plate, whoever the person is. So you might say, I have a lot on my plate. That's why I like learning English with the news, because I can learn vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, natural sentence structure at the same time. Does that describe you? If it does, then put that's me, or that's right, that's me, that's right. Put whatever you want in the comments. That's right in the comments. Now here, notice the author included like me. This is a great technique, and it's in between commas, which means it's optional. You can remove it entirely and the sentence will be grammatically correct without it. You may think you're exhausted because you have too many things on your plate. So without it, it's entirely correct. What's the purpose of including it? Like me. Well, the author is saying this is the reason why I think I'm exhausted because I have so many tasks to complete. I have so much on my plate. So you can make the statement sound more personal or show your relationship by using like me, like us, like him, like our company, whatever the reference is. But there's another reason. So maybe it's not because you have too many things on your plate, too many tasks to complete, but there's another reason. According to a new book. So remember with according, this is always in the ing form. And then to, your preposition is to. And then it can be someone. According to Jennifer, learning English with the news is a great method. That's true. Or if you're like me, I enjoy learning English with the news. You could use that as well. So according to someone or according to something, in this case, a new book. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Case in point, while I was writing this piece, I responded to dozens of emails from colleagues and students. Okay, let's review this. You might be wondering, why does it say case in point and then there's a semicolon? Case in point is used as a way of providing a specific example to support what you said. It's a more formal way of saying, for example. Now, here, this is an example of how this person has too many things on their plate. So case in point, and then they're going to have a long list of things they have on their plate. Let's review this example. The English language is full of exceptions. Now you want to provide a specific example. Of course, you can say, for example, or as an example, more formally, to illustrate this. Or you can use this phrase that we just learned, case in point. Case in point. So notice that linking of the S, case in point. And then you have to provide an example that shows the English language is full of exceptions. There are more than 100 irregular past simple verbs. So it could be any example of that. And that's why you need to learn English naturally like you're doing now. So that's how you can use case in point. If you're not sure of how to use it yourself, you can just use for example. Case in point, while I was writing this piece, I responded to dozens of emails. So how many emails did she respond to, or he? I'm not sure. Did the author respond to? Dozens. Well, 1 dozen is 12. So the plural of dozens would be 24 or 36, perhaps. We don't know, but it has to be at least 24 because dozens is plural. So dozens, dozen, a dozen, 1 dozen is 12. I responded to dozens of emails, but native speakers don't use this to precisely say 24 or 36. It's simply a replacement to many emails, but it should be at least more than 12 to use this, to dozens of emails. From colleagues, repeat after me, colleague, 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 and then add the S, colleagues. Colleagues, and students. So remember, this author is going to list all the different things they have on their plate. So the dozens of emails, got a huge medical bill. So got is a common replacement to received in a more everyday way. Got a huge medical bill. Replied to a text. So here you replied to, notice that preposition, replied to a text about a home repair. So a home repair is something you need to fix, repair in your home. It could be a broken window your door won't lock, the faucet is leaking, could be anything. So something you need to fix in your home. And learned that my older daughter needs to wear white to school next Monday. So notice older daughter. In American English, we really don't use the word elder in our everyday speech. There are certain times we use the word elder, but what we use out of our mouths naturally is older to represent the age range. So if she has an older daughter, it means she has more than one, and this one is obviously more years. My older daughter needs to wear white to school next Monday, while the younger one, so she could say while my younger daughter, but because she already said daughter, she's replacing it with one. And she could say my younger one. She doesn't need to say the younger one. She could say my younger one. So both of them are fine. My younger one is supposed to wear the colors of fall. So this person is purposely showing things in their professional world and their personal world to show the different range of things they have on their plate. Let's keep reading. This relentless barrage. Repeat after me. Barrage. Barrage. So don't look at the spelling because you wouldn't pronounce it the way I am based on the spelling, because English is not a phonetic language. You can't learn the pronunciation from the spelling. So close your eyes, listen to me, and repeat. Barrage. Barrage. This relentless barrage of interruptions and switching between thoughts and technology platforms is leaving us utterly exhausted. Okay, let's talk about the meaning and we'll confirm the pronunciation of other words as well. Let's start with barrage. So saying this relentless barrage of interruptions. Adding barrage means that the interruptions were many, numerous, and they came all at the same time. So I could say after the lesson, I had a barrage of questions from my students. So imagine I was teaching this in real time and I stopped talking and all of a sudden all these students put up their hand or are asking me questions. So there's a lot of them, but they come at the same time as well. So that is a barrage. Just imagine all these things being directed towards you. And it's generally used with questions, comments. It can be used negatively in terms of criticism, complaints, interruptions. So an interruption, of course, is if I'm teaching this lesson and I don't turn off my phone, if my phone beeps, that would be an interruption. It takes my focus away from the lesson and onto my phone. Or if there's a knock at the door, that would be an interruption as well. So an interruption doesn't necessarily have to be from a person. It could be from technology, of course, a device. And adding relentless makes it sound even stronger. This barrage of interruptions, that already sounds very strong because the word barrage means that all these things coming at you. But then adding relentless, it intensifies that. Now let's move on to this word. It may be unfamiliar to you. Utterly. So this sound, Now I'll pronounce these as a soft D sound. Utterly. Utterly exhausted. This just intensifies exhausted. So it means completely, fully, totally. Now this example shares a negative, exhausted, extremely tired, and then utterly is modifying that, intensifying it, but you can use it in a positive, of course. So hopefully someone says to you, wow, I'm utterly impressed with your speaking skills. So of course, I'm impressed. That already sounds very positive. And then instead of saying completely or totally or extremely, they can use utterly. I'm utterly impressed. So that's a great word to have in your vocabulary. It is not as common as the alternatives, but it is commonly used by natives, and it will help you understand natives when you hear it and also help you sound more advanced too. Okay, so the barrage of interruptions, switching between thoughts and technology, like the example she gave above, or he gave above, is leaving us utterly exhausted, says Paul Leonardi of the University of California. According to Leonardi, so same according to, which commonly starts a sentence, but we saw it before at the end of the sentence, which is common as well. So according to someone in this case, but to use a something, you could say according to Leonardi's research, and then yes, he did the research, but your focus is on the research. So it's more on a something rather than a someone. So it's very commonly used with both. According to Leonardi, every tool we use requires some amount of cognitive focus. So in this case for tool, they're talking about devices, the technological tools, not a hammer, which is also your standard tool. If someone asked me to name a tool with the zero context, I would say a hammer, most likely, because that's your basic tool. But of course, we know the context is technology. So when I see this word, I don't think of a hammer. I think of my devices, the software I use, and other technology. So every tool we use requires some amount of cognitive focus. So cognitive, just think of your brain and the processes taking place to help you pay attention, to focus, of cognitive focus. We have to learn the tool we're enmeshed in. This is an interesting choice, not that common, not very common at all. In fact, I don't think you need to add it to your vocabulary because of how uncommon it is, but just so you understand it here, if you're enmeshed in a tool, it simply means that you use this tool a lot, but it also sounds like it's more of a requirement or an obligation that you need or must use this tool. When we switch, so when we switch tools, so now I'm using Loom, which is a software, to create this lesson for you, but then I may switch and start using a completely different tool, ChatGPT, for example. So I have to go from doing what I'm doing now to then switch to using another tool. So that's when we switch tools. When we switch, we have to disengage. So stop focusing on the tool I'm currently using and re-engage in another area of focus. So just shift your attention, shift your focus. That would be the easier way of saying that. We have to disengage and re-engage in another area of focus. So re-engage, when you add re to a word, it means you have to engage again. So this, notice the main verb is engage, but then they're adding the prefix, which changes the meaning. So disengage, stop engaging. Re-engage, start engaging. Re-engage in another area of focus. And we also have to switch how we're using that tool. And for pronunciation, notice that this is a fully stressed sound. So you pronounce it as re, re. And then you just say the verb, re-engage, re-engage. So you will hear this as two separate sounds. We have the re, in. So this is an unstressed sound, so it's in, engage, because this is the stressed sound, gauge, gauge, engage, engage, re-engage, re-in, re-engage. So there's three sounds here, re-engage. And this, dis, is, dis, same pronunciation, engage, disengage, disengage. Now let's keep reading. Our brains do not do a good job of switching that quickly. So here you can say, you can use something positive do a good job, and then add a negative word to make the overall meaning negative. If you want to reduce the amount of words required, you can use a negative adjective and then don't include the negative. Our brains do a job, okay? And then you need an adjective. So what would be a negative adjective? Our brains do a terrible job of switching that quickly. So terrible is the first one I thought of. So again, we have our verb is do. You need this article is connected to job, a job, and then your adjective of, and then your verb in ing because of is a preposition. So terrible is the first one I thought of. Can you think of some negative adjectives instead of terrible? Put it in the comments and hopefully I'll remember that you aren't describing my lesson, because if I just see something negative in the comments, I may think you're saying it about the lesson, but that's okay. Our brains do a horrible job, horrific. That would be extremely horrible. It sounds quite intense. Maybe awful, a horrible, terrible, horrific, awful. If you can think of any others, put it in the comments, maybe with a little happy face so I know it wasn't about my lesson. Our brains do not do a good job of switching that quickly. The main issue is that we haven't evolved to make the switches as quickly as we do today. So by saying we haven't evolved to make the switches as quickly as we do today, it's saying that we are not able to. Currently, we're not equipped with that ability. We don't have that ability would be a basic way of saying it. We don't have that ability. We're not equipped with that ability is what I first said. And then I simplified it. And in my examples, of course, that ability means the ability to switch as quickly as we do. So I do switch. I'm on Loom, the software I'm using right now, and then I switch to something totally different, and then I switch to a home repair, and then I switch to something else. So we do those switches now. That's what he means by as quickly as we do today, because of how much we have on our plates. So notice this as, and then quickly as. So as quickly as. You need the double as. It leaves us feeling exhausted. Or what was that word? The adjective to say extremely exhausted. Do you remember? It leaves us feeling utterly exhausted. If you couldn't remember that, it's totally normal because our brains require a lot of repetition. That doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. It means you're normal. You need repetition. And that's why I create the free lesson PDF so you can review everything and get all the repetition that you need. So make sure you do a lot of repetition. Feeling exhausted, feeling utterly exhausted. And of course, the it being the fact that we're switching tasks so frequently. Let's continue. And unlike when we're physically tired. Okay, so here is a different prefix. Prefix, pre, you can think of it as before. So pre is before the word. So the word is like, but then if you add this prefix, it makes it the opposite. Un makes it the opposite. And unlike. But prefixes, there's different combinations because with engage, the prefix was disengage. So in this case, it's unlike. And unlike when we're physically tired. So it's saying this doesn't happen when we're physically tired, and the this being whatever is said next. And unlike when we're physically tired, we don't even realize how exhausted we are by tech. Okay, so now this is what doesn't happen when we're physically tired.
So when we're physically tired, we know it. My eyes feel heavy. My body feels sore and I don't have energy. I know when I'm physically tired. You know when you're physically tired. But the author is saying we don't even realize, so we don't even know how exhausted we are by technologies. We have good sensory feedback to show us when we're physically tired. So sensory, this comes from our senses. So like I just said with myself, my eyes get tired, my body gets sore. So those are my senses, my sense of sight, taste, smell, etc. So sensory feedback to show us when we're physically tired. Otherwise, we could collapse. So collapse is when you suddenly fall to the ground, which can happen when you're extremely tired. But thankfully, because of the sensory feedback, you may stop before that point, is what they're saying. Now, with collapse, you can use this for a building could collapse. So suddenly fall to the ground, maybe because of an extreme storm, for example. So you can use this in other contexts, but for a person, it's if I were standing and I just dropped to the ground. You would say, oh my God, Jennifer just collapsed. Now it's a verb, so I said it in the past simple. She just collapsed, because the ED is pronounced as a soft T. Otherwise, we could collapse, and that's dangerous. Yes, of course, it's dangerous to suddenly fall to the ground. Now, this otherwise is used to contrast to this last statement, which is we have good feedback, good sensory feedback. If we didn't, we could collapse. So the otherwise represents if we didn't have good sensory feedback. So our body knows to send signals to our brain to say, stop. This is when we're physically tired. Our brain tells us, stop running, stop lifting things. You need to take a break. Stop. But we didn't evolve to sit in an office in front of a computer like I'm doing right now. So we didn't evolve. It's saying this wasn't natural for us. This wasn't the way our bodies were designed. We didn't evolve to sit in an office in front of a computer. So our brain doesn't know to tell itself it's tired. So to tell itself it's tired is talking about this sensory feedback. So it's saying, remember, because it used unlike, so we know we don't have the sensory feedback required with exhaustion because of technology, but we do have it with physical exhaustion because that's the way our bodies were designed. We can just keep taxing ourselves. So if you keep taxing yourself, it means you keep going even though it's difficult on you or it's challenging. So you keep taxing yourself. You keep working or using the tools even though you're exhausted. But that residue builds up over time. Then we feel like we've been hit by a semi-truck. So do you know what a semi-truck is? It's a giant truck that carries supplies, large amounts of supplies. It has the 18 wheels on it, for example, that you see on highways. So that's the style of truck, semi-truck, a semi-truck. So of course, this is just a metaphor because what would it feel like if you were hit by a semi-truck? Obviously, very painful, very negative. So they're trying to give you that metaphor of how terrible you feel in your body because of the exhaustion caused by technology. but of course this isn't literal. Sometimes authors will even add metaphorically somewhere in to let you know, but of course it's obvious that they're using this as a metaphor rather than literal meaning. And that's the end of the article. So what I'll do now is I'll read the article from start to finish and you can focus on my pronunciation. Exhausted, the reason may be how you're using technology. You may think you're exhausted because, like me, you have too many things on your plate. But there's another reason, according to a new book. Case in point, while I was writing this piece, I responded to dozens of emails from colleagues and students, got a huge medical bill, replied to a text about a home repair, and learned that my older daughter needs to wear white to school next Monday, while my younger one is supposed to wear the colors of fall. This relentless barrage of interruptions and switching between thoughts and technology platforms is leaving us utterly exhausted, says Paul Leonardi of the University of California. According to Leonardi, every tool we use requires some amount of cognitive focus. We have to learn the tool we're enmeshed in. When we switch, we have to disengage and re-engage in another area of focus. And we also have to switch how we're using that tool. Our brains do not do a good job of switching that quickly. The main issue is that we haven't evolved to make the switches as quickly as we do today. It leaves us feeling exhausted. And unlike when we're physically tired, we don't even realize how exhausted we are by tech. We have good sensory feedback to show us when we're physically tired. Otherwise, we could collapse, and that's dangerous. So our body knows to send signals to our brain to say, stop. But we didn't evolve to sit in an office in front of a computer, so our brain doesn't know to tell itself it's tired. We can just keep taxing ourselves, but that residue builds up over time. Then we feel like we've been hit by a semi-truck.
Do you want to keep learning English with the news? If you do, put yes, 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 put yes, yes, yes in the comments below. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And here's another lesson I know you'll love. Watch it now.